wouldn't have guessed contentment as a sound. In my kitchen, it's the thin whistle of my kettle and the soft scrape of my spoon against a ceramic mug. Tuesday in Willow Bend, the river ran low and the air was already heavy with summer. I was deciding between pecan scones or sweet potato biscuits for choir practice when the screen door eased open without a knock. Again. The handle clicked like a reminder I had ignored too often. My daughter, Tessa, walked in with a gust of perfume and purpose. She didn't come alone. Damien trailed behind, his tablet tucked under his arm like a promise. He earns his living selling sunlight and slogans, and he always arrives as if the room has been waiting to be rebranded. Mom, Tessa said, bright. Too bright. We're excited. We've got a rollout plan. Roll out. That word never means anything simple. We're going to convert the house, she continued, tapping her screen. Airbnb, high-end, Riverbend retreat, historic charm meets modern comfort. You'll stay in the back room. We'll handle bookings. Less isolation for you. Passive income. Win-win. I set the kettle back on the trivet and watched the steam fade. Convert? She grinned. We've lined up the stager, painters. We'll paint everything white. Damien has a brand kit. The piano will go to storage. The quilts, well, we can do curated cottagecore. You'll love it. Saturday at 9, he slid the tablet toward me. On the screen was my living room, bleached and emptied by software like a ghost of my life without me in it. Tessa, I said, gentle, even. No, she blinked as if I'd mispronounced a word. This is safer for you, and better for us. Hotels are dying. We'd be foolish not to leverage the asset. She meant my house, the one I've kept standing through 3 hurricanes and a lukewarm marriage. I am the asset, I said quiet. This house is my instrument, Damien chuckled like he'd heard a clever line. Come on, Loretta. It's just a brand refresh. You made a plan, I said. You forgot to invite the owner, Tessa stiffened. We've already blocked the calendar through Labor Day. You'll thank us later. The tea cooled between us. I could taste metal in my mouth, the kind that means anger or blood. I thought of the nails I sank into the joists after the last storm, the money I saved one coupon at a time, the long afternoons I taught other people's children to sing while I made one small life a little bigger with every patient dollar. No one will be staging my life or my living room, I said. Not this time. A small spark woke up in me. The same spark I feel when a choir finally catches the note I wanted and everything locks into place like a bird finding its wind. Saturday, 9, Tessa repeated, walking into the hall, already pointing invisible cameras at my walls. Please clean up the clutter before they come. She said it like a kindness. They left a swirl of cool air and sugar behind them. The kettle had gone quiet. So had the whole house. The silence didn't feel like peace. It felt like a held breath. At midnight, I sat with the lamp on, and the river speaking to itself outside. I looked at the photo on my dresser. Me at 50, standing on this very porch, scuffed hands, a cheap hammer, the first real roof I paid for on my own. That roof had been my doxology. I'd sung to God with a nail gun. Now my daughter wanted to rebrand my worship as content. I put down the photo and said to the empty room, enough. I picked up the phone and called the only person who ever treated my stubbornness like a compass,
my quiet,
not a flaw.
my
Ruth
keys,
Ellis answered on the second ring.
my say.
Former city clerk, memory like a filing cabinet, heart like a porch light that never goes out. Loretta? She said, sleep heavy and concerned. Baby, you all right? I need your brain, I said. Tomorrow early, her voice sharpened like a pencil. Meet me at the Blue Heron at 8. Bring your deed. The Blue Heron smelled like cinnamon rolls and gossip. Ruth was already there, silver hair in a clip, a thin folder at her elbow. She wore that look she keeps ready for other people's emergencies, the one that says both I'm listening and I'm already 5 steps ahead. Tell me, she said. I told her. I didn't leave anything tidy. Tessa's certainty, Damien's brand kits, the way they said safer when they meant easier. The way I was expected to be grateful for being repurposed. Ruth listened without interrupting, her thumb beating time on the coffee cup. You know what I always told folks about houses? She said finally. What? If you don't write your own rules, someone else will frame you and hang you on the wall. She slid the folder over. 3 options, she said. 1, life estate deed, keeps control with you until you're ready to hand it off. 2. Record a covenant banning short-term rentals. Yes, you can do that. 3. Formal no trespass letters with backing from the sheriff for anyone not invited. Also change the locks. Today. Would that be unreasonable? I asked. Reasonable went out the door when they scheduled strangers to sleep in your bedroom, Ruth said, her voice like steel wrapped in lace. Let's call Whitaker and Sons. They work fast when I tell them to. Whitaker's office was plain and orderly, the kind of tidy a person keeps when they've seen every kind of mess. Mr. Whitaker's son, Eli, took notes and looked me in the eye, not past me. I told him everything. He didn't flinch. Mrs. Parker, he said, folding his hands, we can record a no short-term lodging covenant by close of business. Your life estate deed can be filed by Friday, and the no trespass letter will be on Sheriff Dalton's desk by lunch. You want to add a key lock? My wife swears by them. I hadn't realized I'd been holding my breath. I exhaled. Yes, I said. Do it all. Ruth squeezed my hand. That's the Loretta I know. And one more thing, I said to Eli. Can we assign the remainder to the Community Music Fund? After I'm gone, he nodded. We'll draft it right now. By noon, papers were signed. By 1, keys were changed. The new lock clicked with a sound I felt in my chest. I walked my rooms and touched what was mine on purpose. The piano I bought after divorce and tuned with tips from church dinners. The baptism quilt, hand-stitched, some pieces faded to the soft of old seashells. The picture of my mother in her apron, the one I didn't wear on Sundays because I was the one who got to sit. I pressed my palm to the wall by the kitchen door where my son, Mark, had carved his initials when I told him not to. He lives in Ohio now and calls me on Sundays, gentle like his father never learned to be. I'm not going anywhere, I told the house. Not until I decide to. The river wind pushed the curtains a little in agreement. Thursday, Tessa's message pinged my phone at dawn. Reminder, stagers Saturday 9, declutter? A smiley I didn't feel like meeting. I didn't answer. Mid-morning, there was a knock. Not hers. Damien stood on my porch with a box of glossy brochures, the kind that make everything look like it smells like lemon. Loretta, he said, selling even my name back to me. Quick walkthrough? We need bulbs swapped to daylight temp. Brighter looks better on camera. You'll need to speak to my attorney, I said. I'd practiced in the mirror. It came out smooth as butter. He laughed because he'd never been told no by anyone he considered a supporting character. We're family. Is that what we're calling it when you change my locks and list my sheets? I asked. He blinked. His phone buzzed. Tessa's on her way, he said, and let the screen door shut without my say-so. The sound bit. I texted Ruth. He's here. She replied in seconds. On my way. Gloss comes off in the first rain. I set water to boil for tea, then stopped and put the kettle back down. I didn't need comfort. I needed clarity. There is a quiet that is fear and a quiet that is a plan. I was learning the difference. Before Ruth arrived, a woman about my age knocked on the back door. Miss Irene from 2 houses down held a plastic tub. I saw his van, she said, tilting her chin toward the road like it owed her a favor. Brought you some of my black-eyed pea salad. You look like you could use something easy to swallow. Bless you, I said, meaning it. Irene stepped inside, put the tub on the counter, and ran her hand along the edge of the table. You know, I lived with my sister for 6 months after my hip, she said. It wasn't the pain that got me. It was learning that every time I sat, somebody could decide I needed to stand. Don't you let them take your sitting away, we laughed. It felt like breath returning to a lung. When she left, the house felt fuller, not in the cluttered sense, but in the way a person feels taller when someone reminds them who they are. Saturday dawned with a light that made the river look like tin. I wore my choir dress, navy blue, pressed, as if I were heading to a different kind of service. Ruth pulled up early, a stack of manila envelopes under her arm. Ready? She asked. I was born agreeable, I said. Ready is something I taught myself. A white van arrived with music and a decal. Damien Doyle Creative. 2 20-somethings hopped out with ring lights and a rolling rack of linen. Tessa followed in a car too small for her certainty, sunglasses too big for her face, and a smile too fixed for the heat. Okay, she clapped, talking to the air. We'll start in the front room. We need the piano gone? Stop, I said, still on the porch. My hands were steady on the rail, not because I needed it, but because it grounded me to the wood I'd bought with my own work. Tessa paused like a metronome catching. "Mom," she said in the voice she used at 13 when I told her no. "Don't make this difficult." "I didn't," I said, and handed Ruth the first envelope. Damien wrote me a letter in October. It was too long by half and full of words like regret and oversight and miscommunication. Near the end, he wrote this: "I was wrong to speak to you like a hurdle. You're the house, not a door in the way." I didn't write back. Not because I was punishing him. Because the fence didn't require a response. Not every apology deserves a future. My son Mark sent me a picture of the first frost in Ohio and a second one of him, in a ridiculous sweater his new wife had knit for a party. He called on Sunday and told me he'd taught his stepson to make pancakes. "I'm trying not to burn them," he said. "You'll burn a few," I said. "That's how you learn your pan," he chuckled. "I think about you a lot," he added. "How you kept us in one house with 2 jobs and a rusted station wagon." Tessa told me what happened. She said you were formidable. "Tell her I prefer steady," I said. "I will," he said, and he meant it. The storm came in late October. Rain like a hand slapping the river. Wind that made the pecan tree moan. The lights went out at 10 and stayed out. I lit the oil lamp and made my way through the rooms like a ship's captain checking her deck. The roof held. The window seals I'd redone with Mark when he was 16 held. I boiled water on my camp stove and ate cheese on crackers and read by lamplight until the quiet settled down into something that felt like a blanket and not a threat. At midnight, a knock came at the back door. I took the lamp and peered through the glass. It was Mr. Alonso from across the street, holding a thermos. "You okay, Miss Loretta?" He called through the storm. "Fine," I said, opening the door against the wind. "Come in out of that." He set the thermos on the counter. "Pump at the church still has pressure if you need extra water," he said. "Me and the boys are checking on folks." "I'm all right," I said. "But thank you." "Take a biscuit for the road," he left, with 2 and a smile. The house creaked in the wind, and I listened not for danger, but for what I know by ear. The complaint of a loose shutter, the content sigh of wood holding. Peace is not the absence of noise. It's knowing which noises belong to you. In November, the town decorated the lampposts with fake pine garland and real ribbon that frayed at the edges by the second week. Ruth and I took paper cups of gas station coffee down to the river and watched 3 ducks scold the water for being cold. When we came back, Miss Irene had left a pie on my porch with a note that said, "Don't share unless you want to." On a Wednesday, a young woman from the county office called. "Ms. Parker," she said, "I'm new here and I just wanted to tell you I read your covenant filing for training and I thought, this is what paper is for." I hung up and cried for 5 minutes straight. Not because of what she said, because I recognize my younger self in her hope, and because it is a rare gift to learn your stubbornness is a public good. Taught my last choir practice before Advent and let the older sopranos argue kindly about whether "O Holy Night" should be taken 1 click slower. I know exactly which click it should be taken at. I let them win. I had enough victories waiting at home. I took 2 songbooks for the teenagers group on Thursday and a stack of photocopies of breathing exercises I'd handwritten with a pen that leaks a little. At the tip because I pressed too hard, one of the teenagers brought a stray dog to my porch. All ribs and hope and the kind of eyes that make you lie to yourself. We named him Button because he followed the seam of the rug to the piano and slept with his nose pressed to the pedal, like he trusted it to move the world. He stayed 2 days and left on his own. It was better that way. Not every love is meant for keeping. I got a Christmas card from Tessa in a pale green envelope with their family standing in a field that was pretending it was a meadow. She had written in her neat, careful print, "I keep wanting to tell you again that I'm sorry." Then I hear your voice saying, "I already forgave you." It's nicer to carry those words around than anger. The card smelled like her perfume. I put it on the mantel beside the photograph of me with my hammer. Both were a kind of proof. On Christmas Eve, the sanctuary hummed with coats and breath and the rustle of pages turning. I sang a solo for the first time in 4 years, not because I needed to be heard, but because I wanted to know if my voice still knew the road back to itself. It did. On the high note, I didn't think about falling. I thought about the lock on my front door and how it clicks differently in winter, a fraction slower, like it knows to be careful with old wood. When the candles were lit and the last verse floated up into the beams, I looked down and saw Tessa holding Jules and Cal's hands, her eyes on me with something I recognized. Not admiration, not regret, respect. It is a simple word that can take a lifetime to earn in your own family. After New Year's, the council posted a list of houses registered for short-term rentals and a list of streets where they would no longer be permitted. My street was on the second list. The ordinance wasn't personal, but it felt like it had my name written on it anyway. I saw Damien in the grocery store once by the canned beans. He lifted his hand in a hello that wasn't quite a request. I nodded, he nodded. Two adults in a public place holding a boundary together. It's its own kind of maturity. The second storm came in February. Less wind, more ice. The limb of the pecan tree came down across the front yard like a closed gate. I made soup with what I had and called Irene. "You want heat?" I said. "My oven's working. I'll bring chess pie," she said. "If we play, I get white." "You always get white," I said. "That's why I keep winning," she said. We laughed and ate and let the ice keep its noise to itself. In March, Mark visited with his new family. He fixed the loose board on the porch without being asked, and I pretended not to notice he'd noticed. He took down the old porch swing and rehung it properly with new chains that didn't squeal. We drank coffee in the afternoon and didn't race it with news. His stepson asked why my piano had teeth, and I played a scale to show him. He put his small hand on the wood and said it felt like it was purring. I am used to being told that instruments sing. It is new to be told they purr. I put that in my pocket and kept it. On an ordinary Thursday, I caught sight of myself in the hallway mirror and stopped. The line of my mouth, the angle of my chin, the way my shoulders rested at their natural height, and not at the height of worry. I looked like my mother, and my mother looked like her mother, and three women looked back at me and agreed. We are allowed. People imagine peace arrives like a parade and stays like a guest. It doesn't. It lives in the small mechanics of a day. The way a lock turns because you're the one turning it. The way a kettle sings for one person and calls that a choir. The way a door opens only when you decide it's time to be known. Sometimes I still reach for gratitude I don't owe anyone. Habit is a stubborn stitch. When that happens, I put on a record that crackles like the edge of a fire and bake biscuits that don't need gravy to be worth their trouble. I call Ruth and ask her how her tomatoes are lying to her this year. I walk down to the river and let it tell me again that going forward and staying where you're meant to be are not opposites. Water knows how to keep house with itself. Spring returned in honest green. The teenagers who wrote rhymes in my parlor performed at the community center. They made their mothers cry, not because the songs were sad, but because they were possible. Miss Irene stitched a new quilt for Jules because she decided the old baptism quilt had seen enough babies for one lifespan. We hung it on the back of the chair and called it a decoration until someone needed it for reading, and then it was exactly itself again. Tessa stopped by one afternoon with a bag of good coffee and asked if I knew how to use the grinder she'd gotten me last year. "I do," I said and showed her. We had one cup and then another, and we talked about nothing and everything and didn't touch the word boundary once. We didn't need to. It was there like a fence in good repair, the kind that lets light through and keeps livestock where they belong. In the evening after she left, I watched the day let go of itself through the east window. The sky turned the color of an old bruise and then healed itself. I set my cup in the sink and ran water. The kettle sang. The lock clicked. The house breathed. The river kept its word. Peace isn't a gift someone hands you. It's the house you build after everyone else stops telling you how to live. Mine has a piano, a stubborn B-flat, a drawer of mismatched measuring spoons, a covenant down at the courthouse with my name on it, and a door that only opens when I say so. Ruth cleared her throat. She has a courtroom throat even after retirement. "Ms. Doyle," she said, using Tessa's maiden name on purpose, "please be advised, this property is now subject to a recorded covenant prohibiting short-term lodging, rental, or any app-based transient stays. It's filed, it's public. Sheriff's office has the no trespass letter specific to your crew. Entry without permission will result in immediate removal. She handed copies to the ring light kids. They took them like hot plates. Damien reached for one and scanned. His smile thinned until it wasn't a smile. Tessa laughed, but it broke at the edge. "Mom," she said, "You can't be serious. You're sabotaging generational wealth." "I'm protecting the only wealth I have left," I said. "My quiet, my keys." "My say, you're being dramatic, and you're being uninvited," I said. A pickup eased to the curb. Sheriff Dalton stepped out, took off his hat, and held it at his chest. "Ms. Parker filed her papers," he said, soft, steady. "I'm only here so everybody keeps their voices low." Tessa's eyes shone with something that wasn't tears yet. "Mom," she said, quieter, "you're going to push us away." "No," I said, "I'm going to stop you from pushing me out." Silence sat down on the porch and crossed its legs like it planned to stay. The ring light kids looked at one another. Damien opened his mouth, then closed it. Tessa tried another door. "What if you fall? What if you forget the stove?" "Then I'll call my neighbor, like I did last spring when I locked myself out," I said. "I'm 72, Tess, not a houseplant you set near a window and missed when you remember. I teach teenagers to breathe into a note and hold steady when everything around them shakes. I can manage my own." She flinched at the word breathe. Her father hadn't looked up from his paper the year she learned to swim. We both remembered. "You will regret this," she said quietly, as if regret were a spell she could lay on me. "Maybe," I said. "But I am old enough to prefer my own regret to someone else's good intentions." I stepped back inside. The new lock clicked. The sound was a hymn. Outside I heard shoe scuffs and a van door sliding shut. Voices lowered. Engines turned over. Peace returned, wearing its work clothes. I made biscuits. Calls stacked up like damp laundry for a week after. Tessa sent paragraphs, arguments, and statistics, then questions without punctuation, then silence. Damien sent numbers with dollar signs and a short video of someone's porch swing and a caption about untapped. "Potential," Mark called to say he was proud. Without saying proud, a letter arrived on heavy paper. Eli laughed when he read it. "They can contest unfairness all they like," he said. "The paper wins. It's your signature. Your rights. Case dismissed." I slept through the night for the first time in months. The river mumbled approval against the bank like an old husband finally learning to listen. A week later, a couple from out of state appeared on my porch with rolling suitcases and polite smiles. "We're here for our stay," the woman chirped, as if I were a bellhop with a spare key behind my ear. "Where did you see that?" I asked. She showed me her phone, my house. Photos from a decade ago, scraped from some corner of the internet. A listing under an account named Riverbend Arts Retreat, a number I didn't recognize. I told them there was a mistake. I called Ruth. She called Eli. Eli called the platform and also had Sheriff Dalton send a takedown notice quoting the covenant. The couple rolled their suitcases back to the car without a fight and apologized for the inconvenience. They meant it, and I had nothing to forgive. It reminded me that sometimes boundaries need tending like a fence after a hard winter. They sag when you forget to walk them. I learned more about modern platforms in 2 days than I ever wanted to know. I also learned that my name is better held by people who answer the phone on the first ring. I sent the Ring Light Kids agency a handwritten thank you for leaving without a fuss. Young people need to be rewarded for good exits, too. On Thursdays, I opened my parlor for free lessons, 3 children at a time, 2 battered violins, and 1 piano with a stubborn B-flat that insisted on being itself. Their mothers waited on the porch and traded recipes and stories out of habit because women don't know how not to build community when left unattended. The house filled with scales and laughter and bad jokes, and my quilts looked right where they were. Miss Irene came on Mondays to mend in my kitchen. She taught me a stitch that hides your corrections in the seam so cleverly that even regret can't see where the fabric changed its mind. I used it on a pillowcase and thought about Tessa, about the places where we had pulled and where we had torn. In late summer, the heat loosened its grip just enough for breath. The youth center director asked if I'd host a songwriting circle. Teenagers sat cross-legged on my rug and rhymed Moon with June like they'd invented it. A boy with a quiet face cried into the crook of his elbow, because his father had forgotten to pick him up. I turned off the lamp and sat with him until he stopped. Teach enough people to hold a note, and you learn when silence is the better music. The first cool night of September, I went with Ruth to the council meeting. She had told me I didn't have to come, but I wanted to. Not out of spite. Out of stewardship. People stood and waved papers, petitions, and app screenshots and photos of strangers smoking on porches at midnight. I recognized the tightness in the room. It wasn't anger. It was the fear of people who realize they don't get to decide how they live unless they decide. The mayor called my name. I stood and told them about my house being listed without my consent, about the couple with the suitcases, about the covenant, and the way paper can hold a life steady when charm fails. I didn't sag my voice into outrage or lift it toward a sermon. I just said, a home is a person's right to be unremarkable where they sleep. Let the people who built their porches decide who sits there. The room made a sound like relief. The ordinance passed in October. It didn't fix everything, but the rules started to match my fence. The letter came from Tessa's first lawyer the week after. Eli sent back 3 sentences and a copy of the covenant. Then my mailbox went quiet for a while. It surprised me how deeply quiet can go. It reaches the corners of the kitchen where worry used to pile like junk mail. It rinses the mornings clean. One Sunday, laughter broke across my lawn like sunlight on water. 2 small bodies barreled up the path and slammed into my knees. Gran! Jules and Cal smelled like sunscreen and cinnamon toast and something else. Hope with its shoes off. I hadn't seen them in months. Tears found my eyes before I invited them. I stooped and kissed foreheads, touched shoulders, counted fingers, because counting is what grandmothers do. Your mama? I asked, looking past them. Tessa stood by the gate, hands in her pockets, hair pulled back without performance. She looked like herself at 19, beautiful and a little lost. Can we come in? She asked. It wasn't a trick question. Yes, I said. But before cookies, you and I are going to talk. The kids explored, counted keys, asked if a person could live inside a piano. Tessa and I sat in the parlor. The afternoon light slanted in like a quiet guest. We both stared at the photograph of my mother for a moment, as if she could referee. Mom, Tessa said. I have been furious, I noticed, I said. We both smiled because the truth can be funny if you let it. And then, she said, I realized something ugly. I didn't want to help you. I wanted to clean you up for company so I didn't have to think about you when work got busy. That's not love, that's efficiency. It's also what your job pays you for, I said. It's hard to turn it off when the world claps for it. I'm sorry, she said. No audience. No brand voice. Just my kid. I forgive you, I said. And forgiveness is not code for come take over again. It's a fence you can lean on without climbing, she nodded. I get it. Her eyes were wet but not spilling. I brought you something, she added, digging in her bag. She handed me a small device, a medical alert pendant, the kind someone is always advertising between the 5 o'clock news and the 6 o'clock weather. If I wear it, I said, I decide when I push it. We aren't going to pretend it calls you. Deal, she said, almost laughing with relief. Boundaries are kinder when they are clean. The kids came back in for lemonade. We sat on the porch and watched the river pretend to be slow. How long do I get? Tessa asked, a half smile and a half plea. An hour, I said. For now? Maybe 2 next week. Boundaries are elastic when people tell the truth. They stayed for 90 minutes. When they left, the house did what it always does when it loves me. It breathed. The lock clicked. I put the kettle on.